Welcome back to our next upcoming session, Entrepreneurship in the Age of Data Ownership and How Crowdsourcing Empowers AI-Driven Startups. So here we're here to talk about the challenges almost every AI startup faces, yet almost no one really talks about. How do you get enough quality data to train your algorithms? In a chat with industry experts, we will talk about various ways of harvesting data in budding and growing businesses and how crowdsourcing can empower entrepreneurs to become data owners, whether they're working on their MVPs or scaling their success. So, all right, let's bring up our amazing speakers here today. We have Olga Megorskaya. She'll be our moderator for the session, and she's the CEO of Toloka AI. We have David DiCaprio. He's the founder of Closed Loop AI. And we also have Robert Matney, VP of Strategic Partnerships at Yonder AI. And Beth White, the founder of MeBeBot. Super thrilled to have such amazing leaders and founders to be here today. So take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm happy to see you all here. Thanks for joining us, and thanks to the audience for coming to our event. If you don't mind, I will share the screen with a presentation and we would start. Okay, I'm sharing my presentation. Okay, I am launching it full screen now. So here we go. Welcome, everyone. My name is Olga. I am the CEO and founder of Toloka AI, the crowdsourcing platform aimed to provide startups with training data for the AI. And today we will be discussing the questions of entrepreneurship in the age of data ownership and how the crowdsourcing empowers AI-driven startups. Today, together with me, I'm happy to welcome our guest speakers and experts from the local Austin community, Beth from MeBeBot, Dave from Closed Loop AI, and Robert from Yonder. It would be very interesting to listen to their experience. But let me start with a brief overview. First of all, about our platform, the Toloka. We are new to Austin, actually. We just moved in recently and just rented an office here at the Domain. And we are happy to join the vibrant Austin startup community. Toloka itself is a global crowdsourcing platform which unites more than 200,000 monthly active users all over the globe, covering more than 100 countries and more than like all the major languages spoken in the world, to deliver high quality data production for AI-driven companies worldwide. I encourage you to follow the link by the QR code where you would find more information about Toloka, and what is more important, you would find there the opportunities for free trial of our platform using the promo codes and the grant program for those who want to establish their data production for your startup. So what we see in the industry is that actually the world is getting obsessed with the AI startups. From the year to year, we see the constantly increasing level of investment and millions and billions of dollars invested in many different companies which are driven by the AI. And comparing to other technologies, AI now is probably the most popular in terms of raising investments. We see thousands of investors investing money to thousands of companies every year. But when we look at those fancy success stories of new booming startups, there is one question that for some reason is often overlooked, is the question of the data which powers their AI solutions. I always say that AI stands on three key pillars. These are hardware, algorithms, and the data. And while the first two have already become commodities on the market, the data is still a bottleneck, and I would say the major thing that actually defines the unique properties of the AI-driven product. Because while the first two parts are equally accessible to all the players on the market, it is the unique data set which actually, to a great extent, defines the unique properties of your product. So there are different ways to actually get the data. If you are just starting your business and you have an idea of the product, so this is where lots of you are starting with, like, okay, where do I get the data? And there are different ways to get it. You can use some open data sets, you can buy the data from the partners, you can crowdsource it or parse it automatically from some user's behavior online, and some other sources. We personally at Toloka, of course, are the great advocates for the crowdsourcing because we are seeing its great effectiveness and flexibility, and we are sure that this is a great and powerful tool in many AI applications. But today, it would be great to hear different stories and different use cases from our dear experts about what are the approaches that they are following to collect the data. So I'm inviting our dear guest speakers. Each one of you would have like approximately 5 minutes to tell a little bit about your amazing product and share with us the story of how you have been dealing with the question of data in your cases. Let me invite Beth to be the first. Beth, do you hear us?
Yep, I do. And can you all hear me?
Yes, we hear you perfectly.
Great, wonderful. Well, I'm Beth White. I'm the founder, and I call myself often the chief bot at MebeBot, just because it's fun. And MebeBot is an AI intelligent assistant designed to automate answers to employee frequently asked questions. So we often call ourselves, we're like the Alexa for the workplace. So if you've ever worked in a company and you started a new job, or you've been an existing employee and you have questions like, how do I enroll in the 401k plan? Or how do I get a new insurance card? Or where are the instructions to using the VPN? Employees can ask MebeBot those types of questions and get answers back to their questions. So that's what we do, and we provide a solution that installs inside Microsoft Teams or Slack, as it works as a web chat, really helps open up the opportunity for employees to get 24/7 support, which we know now with everyone working remote and hybrid jobs, it's really critical and important for employees to have that support. And then the companies themselves, have the ability to control and edit the answers that the employees receive at any point in time. We also do push messaging and pulse surveys to continue to measure employee adoption and engagement. And with our dashboard, we've got a great dashboard that shows real-time usage analytics so that our customers can see exactly how many answers employees are receiving per day, from what geographic location. We support employees in over 30 countries right now, and we have over 11,000 employees utilizing our product. Talking about some case studies and to kind of drill into that, some of the companies you all might hear of in Austin, we have Epicor Software as a customer, E2Open, RetailMeNot, Abrigo. They're all fabulous customers of ours that are looking for ways to use AI and automation. And so when we look at, how our customers are using our solution, it is providing it to employees to get those quick answers to their questions and support their needs. But to get to that core data set, what we did that's probably a little bit more unique is that we took sort of an 80-20 rule. I spent 15 years in HR, so I understood this business problem. I had all these questions directed to me for years. And so I was able to, work with my team to create a web portal that our customers use that have a curated library of over 250 of the most commonly asked questions. Then we applied a lot of training data into that, ingested that data, exposed it to all of our customers who are all on multi-tenant architecture. And now their employees, every time they're asking questions, the crowdsourced approach is actually training the AI data model to be smarter and more accurate over time. And so by having this sort of a contained solution, I call it often a bot in a box because it's very easy to get up and running. Our customers can have 85 to 90% accuracy when they launch the solution. Many people think, oh, our employees are very unique and they're asking all different questions. Well, it's really not that unique. A lot of them are asking the same types of questions. So that's kind of the philosophy that we've gone with. And we just love being able to support what's now called the employee experience. How do we help employees onboard to companies faster, keep them engaged, help support them so that they can be using their focused time to do work that matters for the business.
Oh, thanks. That's super interesting. But what was like the first start when you just started? How did you obtain the first piece of data? Can you share with us that?
Yeah, I mean, well, the reality is many companies had created lots of different types of FAQs out there. I mean, you can actually, every public entity has an FAQ that's HR or IT oriented to support their employees. So we had ways to kind of ingest a little bit of that data to get things started. But by having more of a contained, knowledge base that we have, it allowed us to further define and really test and train the AI model. We apply human supervised learning as well. We're constantly looking at, the accuracy of the answers, and we give employees opportunities to provide a thumbs up or thumbs down on every question served to them or answer served to them so that we can continue to train that AI data model.
Oh, thank you so much. And it's actually something that we face so many times when every particular customer thinks that their use case is very unique, but then in the end you find out that there are lots of similarities which can help different customers all over their experience. Exactly. Thank you so much.
Sure.
That's very interesting. Dave, I would like to pass the microphone to you to share your story and listen how do you solve the questions of data in your startup.
Great. Yeah, Dave DiCaprio. I'm the founder and chief technology officer at closedloop.ai. So Closed Loop is a healthcare data science platform. So we are actually helping different healthcare organizations, and that's health insurance companies or hospital systems or any of the many other organizations involved in healthcare. We provide tools to them to help them build and use AI and machine learning in their business. There's so many different areas that machine learning and AI can impact healthcare that we don't try to build all of those. We just try to build the tools that help our customers utilize that data better and build those kinds of models. And so very often we're helping our customers build models to do things like predict who is likely to end up in the emergency room or having a hospital visit, so you can proactively intervene before that person ends up having some bad outcome. If you really want to make a difference in the cost of healthcare, you have to figure out how to avoid people from ever showing up at the emergency room or the hospital at all. You can think about how to make it cheaper once they get there, but really the answer is once you're in the hospital, it's kind of too late at that point. And so making a difference in healthcare costs is about more proactive care and about intervening earlier in the process. And that's for a specific acute event or even in chronic disease, intervening earlier. And so by predicting the progression of disease or predicting these bad outcomes, we can help healthcare organizations be more proactively and get out to their members, their customers, their patients more quickly and more effectively. We have some natural challenges in data due to the fact that everything we do deals with protected health information. So every customer we have is controlled by HIPAA. And so
probably you're dealing with the hardest type of data one could imagine, really.
Yeah. And so it's interesting when you talked about those different areas in which, there's the hardware and the algorithms and the data. I think, one of the areas where we have particular expertise is not in amassing a huge amount of data, but understanding how to use that data effectively. And so a lot of our tools are around how to interpret medical records and interpret pharmacy claims or prescription records, all those kinds of things. An example of that is we can get all of somebody's raw prescription records and aggregate that up to know what medications are they on and how frequently are they taking them by looking at, you know, the prescription refill dates that they have and how many pills were in each prescription. There's a bunch of logic there and you have to figure it all out. But there's a lot of processing that happens on top of the data before it can go into AI, especially in healthcare, because the data is very complicated. And so that's where we specialize. So we were able to sort of build a value proposition for our business, not based around we have a lot of data, but we understand your data and we can give you tools that make more use out of it. So to address your question, how did we get started?
Yeah.
You know, we were a startup. We did what most people did, is we went around with the humble startup play and begged people to give us data. We said, we're smart people and we'll do work for free if you can, you know, trust us enough. And we knew what we were doing on the security side. We got our first customers to sort of give us some data, and that allowed us to prove out the initial algorithms and the initial approach of what we were doing.
So probably the most difficult part was on the security side, right? To somehow obtain the data, which is
yeah, you know, HIPAA. There's a lot with HIPAA to sort of be able to get to the point where you can work with protected health data. A lot of it, though, is really just doing a good job of everything. There's nothing magic about it. It's, you know, if you read everything you're supposed to read and you do everything you're supposed to do and everything's encrypted and you make sure that passwords aren't spread around and nobody has access to anything, and you can document all that and prove it, then you can do it. So it is a bunch of work, but it's also, when you get in the habit of it, you feel like, well, this is really how all data should be protected, isn't it? Not just healthcare data. So
that's actually relieving to hear, because I guess many startup founders are really thrilled about the HIPAA thing, and like it's so scary even to approach this topic.
Yeah, there are definitely a bunch of things you have to know how to do, but it is possible. I will say one other quick thing, just because this is a crowdsourcing. I actually did an AI project, a side project on sports analytics annotation that was basically automated analysis of tennis videos. And that was an AI application I built sort of as a side project for myself. I built an annotation tool and ended up crowdsourcing the annotation for that. And that is actually turned into a really useful little platform. It's used by like 30 different Division I tennis programs in the US, and it's still based on crowdsourcing data. And so it was built long before any of these platforms existed.
That's cool. That's super interesting. Yeah, thank you so much.
That was a case where crowdsourcing really helped us get off the ground.
I would just remind that after this session, we are having the breakout session where we invite all the people to share their experience and some funky data sets they had ever to collect. I guess your tennis case can be also one of the pretenders. We are going from Toloka side. We're going to prize the winner or the author of the most funkiest data set with a cool merge of Toloka, powering AI, empowering people. So maybe you have good chances with your use case. Thank you so much. That's super interesting. I'm passing the microphone to Robert. Robert has a super interesting use case. I think it would be very interesting for everyone to hear more about that.
Thanks, Olga, and thanks, Toloka. My name's Robert Matney. Hello, I lead our strategic partnerships work at Yonder. With Yonder, just to set the frame, we work with publicly available information, open source data, and we help our customers understand and contextualize online culture and discourse. And we have a SaaS dashboard solution, that's hard to say, where we help brands and organizations strategically identify threats online, typically in the shape of, say, adversarial narratives or or networks of agenda-driven adversarial accounts, but also identify opportunities, typically in the shape of intelligence about which audience are most responsive or most likely to be responsive to their brand messaging and are in alignment with their company values for sales or marketing support. And it's based on this, understanding that the internet has more power than ever to shift public opinion and change consumer behavior. And our driving why is that we feel that brands need more time to prepare for the unpredictable in order to protect brand value, brand reputation, and they'll also benefit from data to help them personalize content to stay connected with influential groups. And the how that we pursue is by mapping influential groups that reliably drive conversations online and that have the potential to damage reputation through boycotts, harassments, politicization, things like that. And then also to identify influential subcultures wherever they may be having discourse in the online space as a path to engagement and virality. So we track narratives and groups from sort of fringe groups with their narratives, how they might make a path through niche media to power users and then on into the mainstream. And it operates a little bit like an epidemiological analysis. And so we track those kinds of groups. And our goal then is to fill the social intelligence gap by covering platforms that aren't often covered in social listening platforms, and also to provide trajectory, both historical and to some degree predictive, based on that historical data set of what those factions do over time. Our data story is that we secure publicly available data at massive scale across a wide variety of social media platforms, inclusive, of course, of the mainstream platforms, but also alternative tech platforms. And we do leverage APIs wherever they're available. And then we use AI to find the influential users and groups wherever they are online, track the narratives that originate or are amplified by those groups, ideally before they go viral for our customers. And of course, the idea is to give those customers time to prepare or to seize the opportunity, if that's the side of the equation we're on. And most of our machine learning that we have implemented currently is unsupervised and built to detect patterns of similarity at scale in normalized but unlabeled data. So I can dig deeper into the faction detection and the narrative detection if that's of interest. So I will. So our tool focuses on finding patterns or similarities in that publicly available social media content that indicates emergent and durable narratives, as well as the detection of accounts that behave in highly similar and frequently agenda-driven ways over time. We refer to them as factions, and in so doing, in that similarity, they tend to exert disproportionate influence in online discourse, owing to how the platforms have their algorithms of content promotion functioning in space. And then once we have the factions and the narratives, we juxtapose those two and provide a fresh set of analytics around trajectory and where things are likely to go.
Oh, thank you so much. So do I understand correctly, like speaking about the first steps with the data when you just started, like your first steps were related to parsing the data online, right? Parsing some social media. And I know that you are able to parse some like not the most popular social networks, right? So
yeah, that's
very
right.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's right, Olga. I mean, that was the initial lift is securing the data. So we have a data collections pipeline that's hitting against APIs, for example, with Twitter and Facebook. But then, of course, when we're looking to incorporate data like 4chan and 8chan, it's just a different kind of lift. And of course, it requires normalization. What are the analogs between those platforms? Sometimes they exist, sometimes they don't exist at all. But if we're going to derive meaningful patterns across platforms, we've got to find out wherever those analogs do exist.
Super, that's very interesting and very interesting application of the technology and very useful, I would say, for many companies. Let me share some of the use cases of the Toloka and then it would be great to discuss also your thoughts on the effectiveness of the crowdsourcing and some questions from our audience, please don't hesitate to ask the questions. We would try to answer them together with our experts. Just give me 1 minute. I will share the screen to finalize. Okay, here I go. Yes, this is myself. Yeah, it's seen fine. Yes. Okay, so thank you so much, our dear experts. I would, if you don't mind, share a couple of use cases from the customers of Toloka, just to give our audience some additional ideas of how they can start with the data, start with their startup, having the first steps of initiating the initial data set. So imagine this is a real-life use case. One of the founders had the business idea. He wanted to sell sneakers online via the online app without people having to try them on. The idea is very interesting and understandable, and we know that technology allows us to do that. But then comes the first initial question, okay, where do I get the data to train my model on? And the startup Neatsy, they are the customers of Toloka platform. They came up with quite a brilliant idea. They said, okay, we would ask, using the crowdsourcing, we would ask thousands of people all over the world to take small short videos of their feet, quite similar to the case that Dave described with the tennis records. And actually it really worked. Using the Toloka application, they have collected more than 5,000 videos. It took us just several days because the crowd is really very large, and roughly speaking, at every moment of time, there are thousands of people available and thousands of people who were interested in actually participating in such quite a fun task, take a video of your feet. So what they did is they have collected around 5,000 short videos. Then they have divided those videos into the set of screenshots. They have removed the duplicate slides, and thus they have ended up with around 50,000 images, the data set, which they fed into the model to obtain like the model predicting the fit of the shoes for every customer of their app. And Toloka helped them to obtain all the needed data within literally less than several days, so that they could continue the work on their product further. And one other case is in a way also similar to what maybe Beth was describing. The Y-combinator-backed startup Handl is using crowdsourcing for the human-in-the-loop process. So what they are dealing with is actually the task of transcribing the handwritten text into the structurized digital form. This is quite an often case in many financial services or insurance reports and etc. There's lots of human work that needs to be somehow automated. And this startup has a very smart algorithm of automatically processing this data. But as the majority of the algorithms, and probably many of you know that, practically none of the algorithms work like perfectly in 100% of cases. Usually, as just Beth mentioned, there are like 80% of cases that would be processed automatically just fine. But then there would be 20 or 10% of edge cases, difficult cases where machines fail, but humans do better than machines. And what did these guys do is they actually built a human-in-the-loop pipeline where the majority of cases is processed automatically, but then the edge cases are sent to Toloka Crowd. And there, again, due to availability of large amounts of people, all 24 hours, 7 days a week. There are all the time people ready to catch these tasks. So within 6 to 8 minutes, the difficult cases from the documents were transcribed by human. And that allowed this company to actually set up the pipeline which processes more than 4,000 documents every day. And comparing to the in-house solution that of labeling solution that they have been using before, it allowed them to reduce 2 times the time for processing the documents and actually increase multiple times the whole throughput of their process and of their system. So why we are actually strong believers in the crowdsourcing? I'm personally working in this topic for more than 10 years already. And I'm really passionate about the technology and actually the whole concept of obtaining the wisdom of the collective experience of thousands or even millions of people and managing their minor efforts to obtain useful signals and useful results that can be later applied to feed the technology. So why do we believe so much in that technology? First of all, there's such a large variety of use cases where you can use crowdsourcing. We've been speaking about the AI applications, but there are also many others. Like, for example, you probably can see the logo of Toloka. And how did we choose the particular logo? Our designers came with several options and different variants of the design, and we used the public vote to. Yeah, my friends are helping me to show the logo on my T-shirt. So what we did is actually we used the public vote on Toloka to understand which of the design is admired more by the crowd. Sometimes, especially the further we move from the online to offline, crowdsourcing is literally the only way to collect some data. If there's something not happening in the online world, the only way to obtain the data is literally to ask people to collect it from the offline. Also, as I have mentioned, the algorithms are never perfect. So the crowdsourcing, having large amounts of people available at every moment of time, allow you to build real-time human-in-the-loop processes. And what is important for me personally, I would say, is that when crowdsourcing is organized in an ethical way, it is also a source that can bring significant social impact to both people who participate in the process of the crowdsourcing, because it gives flexible and interesting source of additional income for those who are in need of that. But at the same time, it allows to improve the local environment. For example, we are right now running a very interesting project in Barcelona where we use the feet on street crowdsourcing. Like, people are asked to go by feet to a certain location and verify whether the business or the organization has a good access for disabled people. And again, this is quite often this is the only way to obtain this information for large amounts of the territories. And that's why we believe in the crowdsourcing so much. And throughout the history of Toloka, we are observing the growth of demand for the crowdsourcing correlated with the global rising of the AI market. And that helped us grow throughout several years to become, I would say, one of the largest crowdsourcing platforms in the world. We cover more than 100 countries and all the major languages, with more than 200,000 people active every month. So what's next? Right now, I would like to, we have some more time to discuss with our precious experts some questions regarding the crowdsourcing. And there was a question about how to effectively store the data. But before that, I would just remind our audience, once again, please don't hesitate to follow the QR code and the link to get the promo code for free trying of Toloka. And for those of you who want to dig deeper into the question of crowdsourcing data collection, we are happy to offer the grant to the startups. So please don't hesitate to apply. I would remind once again that in like 10 minutes, we would be having a breakout session and discussion, telling funky stories about different data sets and choosing the winners who would get the merch of Toloka during our happy hour. And at 2:30, there would be a live workshop demo where we would show how actually, like, what are the particular steps you need to do in the tool in order to launch your data collection project for your AI startup. Thank you so much. I'm now stopping to share my screen, and let's come back to the questions. So the question number one was, any recommendations on the way for storing the data? Is it public cloud or some other ways? Maybe some of our experts would want to share your experience. Dave, maybe you have something?
Yeah. So, certainly the public cloud is the default place for pretty much everything nowadays. It's, especially for a startup, I think, we have made the commitment to be just cloud-based. We don't offer anything on-premise. And we sell into healthcare, which is one of the, they're a laggard in most of this stuff, in most of these areas. But even the healthcare organizations that today are still not on the cloud, they at least apologize for it and have a plan to get to the cloud. So I think, that's probably the way to go.
Thank you. Robert, maybe you can something to add, or the same?
Fully ditto. We have a secure implementation of cloud storage.
Okay, Beth, what about you?
Yeah, cloud storage as well. And it's just, being mindful of the data that you're actually storing. We just ingest a lot of data and purge it out. So aggregate a lot of the results and ensure more privacy and security for our customers.
Yeah, I would vote for public cloud as well. In Toloka, we also store the data at Microsoft Azure. So all the customers are able to use that infrastructure. So there's a very interesting question number 2. What processes and policies do you have in place to ensure the data powering your AI isn't causing harms or creating inequitable outcomes? Very interesting questions. I don't know, Robert, do you have anything to answer that?
Sure. I mean, at the heart, our data is publicly available data that is people voluntarily revealing their own thoughts and perspectives. So that insulates us from some of the categories of concern that are raised by this question. Another policy for us is that though we algorithmically detect highly similar behaviors of accounts, we do have a human in the loop process to then kind of title and describe, to attribute it in a way that is in alignment with how those groups are articulating themselves. And so we want to render that power back to the people in terms of who's participating or the accounts that are participating. And I mean, I think, the price of getting the right answer to this question is just kind of continual diligence. So we just have a review process in place for our algorithms, and you just have to keep the discipline of reviewing your algorithms and keeping a soft focus on the full business question, and just engage with the most challenging questions as often as you can, which I hope doesn't sound like an evasion. It is really just about continual diligence and discipline.
That's actually, I'm happy to hear that, because this is one of the things that I'm a little bit worried sometimes about the startup industry, is that is there a discipline to constantly monitor how your model is working once you have deployed it into the production? Dave, do you have something to add here?
Yeah. a couple of things. One is monitoring is extremely important. We have a feature drift component that is part of our platform that helps you see if any of your input data looks different than it used to. Obviously, we're in healthcare, and so March of 2020, everything looked different, and it was a pretty big deal to figure out what models in healthcare still mattered last year and what didn't. And if you were trying to look at predict who is going to go to the doctor, all of that information changed. So we had a very striking example of massive changes, and it's really important to think about that because you can make some bad decisions otherwise. So monitoring is ongoing monitoring.
Yeah,
Incredibly important.
You have just overcome this really huge drift in the context in March 2020.
I don't know how many times I've looked at a graph and been like, what went on there? What was that like? Oh, that was March of 2020. Okay, I know what happened right there. It was just, like every model, every single graph you look at of healthcare over time.
That's interesting, by the way. And Beth, what about you, by the way? Did the whole COVID situation affect your context and your models?
We are a B2B solution, and the answers that are produced and returned to the employee are driven by the business themselves. But what COVID did is we created a lot of new content that our customers could utilize. I mean, we have a whole, I hate to say it, COVID pack of content, in our curated knowledge base around, do I have to wear a mask at work? Do I need to present a vaccine card? So we've had to adapt like everyone else to supporting remote work, hybrid work, return to work scenarios. As far as just ensuring, the data, and I've been part of presentations. We sell to HR and IT teams with inside businesses, and there's a lot of scrutiny on AI data models when it comes to discrimination, biases in the data sets, because again, we have a kind of a contained scenario of content. There's the HR people get to write the content that's then delivered to the employees. So we help eliminate a little bit of that. It's not as open as some of the scenarios where there's technology out there, screening resumes, for example, and using certain, algorithms to determine, which candidates, float to the top, and the opportunity there, frankly, is for a lot of bias, in that scenario. So we're a little bit unique in that we have a discrete set of customers and their employees in a B2B scenario with a controlled knowledge base. But, it is an ever-changing world, and we provide, human supervised or human in the loop, learning to everything we do as well.
Oh, thank you so much. I would add from the experience of Toloka, actually, when we speak about the supervised learning, which is the Toloka is a tool for, I think that it is crucially important to have the access to the large variety of different people with different background to make sure that there are no specific biases in the data that are collecting with the help of the human. And that is why we pay lots of attention to our global coverage and many tools and instruments for smart targeting different tasks to different audiences. Okay, thank you so much. Actually, that was a super interesting session. If any of our experts would like to say something for the closing part for a couple of minutes. What do you think about the era of data in AI? Do you think it is the last and the main question right now, or what do you think about that?
And there's a lot of big topics.
I think the issue of bias and fairness is incredibly important. These tools. So first, I think it's important to separate bias and fairness. We look at these as independent issues. Bias, we look at as, does your model perform equally well on various subgroups? And that's more of a technical question, and you can make sure a model performs or not. Fairness has to do with how a model is employed and the decisions it's making, making it, and whether you are allocating resources in an equitable way. And that is not something that can be solved technically. And so I think it's very important to understand that from an AI perspective, the technology plays a role in bias and fairness, but also just traditional ethics and understanding what it is you're trying to achieve and does the model achieve that. The same model can be used in very fair ways and in very unfair ways, depending on the decision and depending on whether you're providing, are you denying a loan to somebody, or are you trying to target people for additional outreach for more education? The same model might be very appropriate for one of those and actually illegal to use in the other one.
Yeah, thanks so much. That's a very interesting topic. Hopefully the next Austin Startup Week, we will devote to deeper dive into this topic. Thank you all very much. It was great discussion. Navira, I think I'm passing the microphone to you.
Yes, thank you so much, all of you. I've learned so much. And I think we had such an amazing variety of startups speaking today. We learned from Robert over at Yonder how they use crowdsourcing, or not crowdsourcing, but they use a public domain to build their data sets, right? So, Yonder is mapping influential groups and subcultures to uncover discourse and track those narratives, right? And understand what social media is saying to build that social intelligence. And then we move on to Beth from MeBot, who has really a niche area where she is pulling information and using her own personal experience. And as Beth eloquently said, you only need to solve like 80% of those questions or be prepared to answer 80% to cover most of your use cases. And then we heard from Dave at Closed Loop AI, where you can't really necessarily go to the internet to gather your data and use crowdsourcing. He really needed to think outside the box and just directly ask his partners and customers for that data. So loved how we have such a wide variety of ways of how startups are managing their data sets. And then from Toloka, of course, we heard about they're helping startups solve their needs by going straight to the crowds to help startups get their hands on their data sets. So thank you so much for that amazing presentation.